Are we ready? Okay, very good. Well, I want to welcome you all to this time of conversation, this meeting with Molly. We want to invite you into the conversation. Today, my special guest, Reverend Dr. Ry Siggelkow, is going to be sharing with us about the new Center for Social Transformation, and we are very excited. Welcome to this time. I hope that you know how very welcome you are to join us virtually or to come by and see us. I have a door that's open pretty much all the while and would love to have you there. Just an update or two before we get into the heart of our conversation. The summer term is ending. I was with a gathering of students Sunday night, and they were all talking about their papers, what was left to be done, and how much they had to write this week. We've had a very good summer term with some creative courses not offered before. We had 141 students in class this summer, which is 24 more than last year, and that makes me glad. This fall, we will have a record-breaking enrollment, and there's nothing that is as positive an indicator for a school as a growing student body. Of course, the big news is that we are turning 60 this year. This is the 60th anniversary of the seminary. The first classes were held in the fall 60 years ago. The theme for our anniversary is Many Voices United, which really speaks to who we are as an institution. We are this wonderful blend of varied voices, seeking to find unity in caring about the mission and the vision and the values of this good place. So we will be celebrating starting September 28th. We will have a gathering where we will hear from former faculty, present faculty, as they explore the question. It's a great question. What were you facing? What was your challenge when you were teaching this particular topic? And how do those differ from today? We've always had a wonderful blend of a curriculum deeply rooted in the classical disciplines, but always open to the cutting edge cultural, social issues of the time. And so this time in the fall, in September, when alums and present students and faculty gather, will be really splendid. Of course, the commitment to justice that has been a hallmark of United will be highlighted in that, which really leads into the conversation that Ry and I want to have today. Our commitment to justice suffuses the curriculum, the co-curricular activities, and is part of the DNA of this place. As many of you know, this past year, we were given a Lilly grant of $1 million to fund a leadership center for social justice. And today, Ry and I are going to talk about this. I want to introduce him just a bit. He is the director of this program and brings wonderful imagination and creativity and wide connections in this area to the task. Ry is a PhD grad of Princeton, working in theology and ethics. We stole him from St. Thomas, where he was the director of initiatives in faith and praxis, taught courses at the intersection of race, class, gender, with a focus on migration, the abolition of borders, and theologies of liberation. He brings a fresh perspective to us because of his community organizing, particularly working with the Esperanza community. There's a longer name that I'm sure Ry can fill in, but has been working with undocumented people and been an advocate for persons who have significant challenges making their way without papers and finding a new life in this place. Ry is an ordained Mennonite, has been a pastor, and brings this long Anabaptist, shall we say, concern for the public good to all that he is doing. So, Ry, welcome. How do you think these varied experiences prepare you to do the work of the center?
Well, thanks, Molly. This is really exciting for me to be in conversation with you and yeah, to be the director of this wonderful new center and to be at United. I think in many ways, my experiences as a pastor, as an intellectual, an educator, and a community organizer have all been preparing me for this role, even though I didn't really know it, because it combines all of my interests, really, my skills and passions. But the path that led me here was not at all planned. I had pursued really an academic route in theology. I was pretty committed to keeping ideas separate from practice, a route that I thought would entail simply spending time with my books in the safety of, a library, which is where I feel most at home. But my calling into pastoral ministry really came near the end of my PhD studies. The central focus of my studies was on the German anti-fascist theologian Ernst Käsemann. Käsemann was a peer of the more well-known Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And I was inspired to write on Käsemann's theology, not only because of his ideas, and not only because of his resistance against Nazism when he served as a pastor in Northwest Germany in the town of Gelsenkirchen, but because of how he engaged the work of theology, how he was open to learning new things, how he was responsive to what was happening in the world around him. In a sense, I read Käsemann as developing a contextual theology of liberation, but one that was deeply connected to his life, to his experiences in the world. In the late 60s, Käsemann ended up throwing his support behind the radical wing of the German student movement, which was a movement led by Christian socialists in Berlin. And he supported the movement, and his daughter actually was at the center of this student movement. And she later would join a revolutionary struggle in Argentina, which ended up costing her life. And
radical daughters often lead their fathers further than they would want to go.
Yes, that certainly happened to him. So her witness had a big impact on his thinking, but it also transformed me. So I had thought I would just write a dissertation on Käsemann, and then I read about his life. I read about how he learned from what was going on in the world. I read about what Elizabeth's witness, really to struggle in solidarity with the people of Argentina and her conversion to that struggle. And I think I was transformed by my reading, and I began to think that praxis matters, that how we live in the world matters, that theology cannot just be a merely academic pursuit. And so when I became a pastor, I found myself having to move from beyond the realm of ideas into the messy, practical realm that pastoral work really demands. And I had to ask the same kinds of questions that I think Käsemann was asking, which was, what does faithful praxis look like in our time and place in this particular context? What might it mean to enter into struggle against the fascisms of our own day? And for me and my congregation, that entailed a deep immersion into the daily struggles of migrant people here in Minnesota against the deadly tentacles of the border regime and the US immigration regime.
The program that we are designing for this center is focused on pastors. Mm-hmm. And so your experience in that is so vital to this. What are your dreams for the center?
Yeah, I think my dream for the center is that it become a place for what the Peruvian theologian Gustavo Gutierrez called critical reflection on praxis in the light of the Word of God. Critical reflection on praxis in light of the Word of God. And, for Gutierrez, this is how he defined theological work. In this sense, it actually, theological work is always a continuing education. And people don't often realize that when Gutierrez wrote those words, he was really proposing a radical reimagining of how we do theology, of theological education. Liberation theology wasn't just an additional subfield or a subset of theology, but an entirely new way, a new approach of doing theology. And of course, within the context of Latin America, in which the established church had long been connected to and historically enmeshed in the justification of imperial and colonial regimes, and theology, of course, aided in that. This entailed for Gutierrez a complex task of decolonizing theology so that the liberating message of the gospel of life could be more clearly and concretely discerned in the struggles of the poor.
So who will participate in this program? How's it designed? And how did you select these folk?
Yeah, so we have 16 pastors that will participate. They come from all over the state of Minnesota. For this first year, we're going to be focused on especially kind of this region. And we have pastors in rural areas. We have pastors from different denominations, mostly congregational pastors, but we have some chaplains. And each of these pastors are working within their own context, trying to figure out what does social justice ministry look like within my context.
And so how did you select these pastors?
That was a difficult thing to do because we had so many wonderful applicants. It was clear that when we were interviewing the applicants that we got for the program, that they were really excited and energized by this idea that there could be a program, and a continuing education program, where they could reflect critically on their own praxis in their community, where they could explore what social justice looks like in a deeper way within their context. And that really is the method, the curriculum, which will be focused on supporting pastors in their self-reflection and supporting congregations too, then in their reflection on how to best do theology within that context. And there's no one size fits all kind of approach. That entails a need for to support pastors in asking critical questions about the context in which they live, beginning to discern, where they see life happening in their congregations, where they see life happening in the world around them, and where they see injustice.
Yes.
Right. And so those challenges about, being able to name and kind of unveil reality so that we can intervene in it. Right.
Yeah. I remember as we were working on the grant, we have two components that I think were very attractive to Lily. And one is this reflective and discerning, but there's also a project, a kind of community development project that the pastors will undertake in light of what they discern about their context. And then there's also this research component. We're basically testing a thesis. And the thesis is that churches that are active in social justice are churches that flourish. And so we are, through this program, I think not only enlarging capacity of leaders, but we're finding ways to ignite some renewal in these congregations.
That's right. Yeah. There will be a focus for each pastor to kind of work on their own project, because the pastors don't need a bunch of information or content thrown at them that then they later apply. Instead, what we're going to do in the program is to, again, draw people into a deeper connection with their own community and their own work. And so the project will be something they develop, and many of them have ideas already, right? Because pastors are just looking for space and time to really reflect on how to carry out an idea, how to look into something, maybe something been stirring in their heart. And so we're hoping that this space, the 9 months of the program, can be a time for them to really develop that project. So, and then at the end of the project, and I'm really excited about this, I'd like to invite you all to our closing ceremony. First, I want to invite you to our launch, but at the end of the 9 months, we're going to have like a party where the pastors can show, and kind of like almost like a science fair kind of thing.
I love it.
They can have exhibits, right, where they can share, like, look at the great work that we're doing in our congregation. Look what we're excited about. look what issues we're going to tackle. And my hope is that this will feel empowering.
Yes.
And I think what's key to that is the friendships that the pastors will build together. So there's a kind of collective work that will also be taking place throughout the program.
Tell me about the instructors.
So the instructors, I mean, that was one of the biggest challenges, was who am I going to find to teach in this program? And not only teach, but these instructors also are developing the program. So we are co-collaborating in the development of the curriculum. And so we have 6 great teaching fellows drawn from a range of areas of expertise, but that's, by expertise, I don't mean kind of necessarily merely academic, right? Expertise. These are people that have been practitioners, deeply involved in the context of their own community, responsive to what's happening in the community, engaged in a critical way, and active, committed people. So we have folks, 2 women, Anishinaabe women, who were at the front lines against the Line 3 movement to preserve the water, right? So we bring they bring their insights into how they discerned, how they organized, how they committed, how they built something, and how they've been able to maintain this, and they've built an organization from it. And we have community organizers and people that teach community organizing. We have a great teacher who has worked on global health issues and social medicine, and founded an organization that is an international organization. So I'm absolutely thrilled. We have pastors too with great pastoral experience to help mentor and can draw from that wisdom. So I'm thrilled about the teachers.
Well, I love that you found practitioners who are already successful and active, and that will be an inspiration to the cohort of pastors who learn alongside. I think that's great. Ry, in thinking about your own pilgrimage, how did your passion for justice arise? We hear something of the academic influences, intellectual influences. What are other dimensions of this?
Yeah, I think my passion for justice has come from many places and many people. In my early 20s, I was involved in the anti-war movement against the US-led war in Iraq and Afghanistan. And that was really inspired by a host of friends and family members, and later the church that I became a member of and later pastored, Faith Mennonite Church in the Seward neighborhood of Minneapolis, which had a long history of resistance against militarization, and a long history of active nonviolence. And later, as a pastor, I became involved in the first iteration of the Black Lives Matter movement after the murder of Michael Brown in Ferguson, and then Jamar Clark here in North Minneapolis, which wasn't too far away from my house, and that had a transformative impact on me, being engaged and involved in that work. And then, of course, the later on the work with undocumented people, and where I became more involved in kind of the daily life of community organizing. And so through that, my life was transformed by friendships. We did a solidarity act with the migrant caravan in 2018, and the people that they lived in our home for about a year, and they transformed my life through their love and through their friendship, and so that's. But I also want to say that I have a deep relationship to the books that I read, and so I don't know if everyone has that relationship, but when I say that I've been like transformed by reading, I really have been. And I believe deeply in the power of and the practice of reading as a transformative practice. And when done in community, I think our lives can be transformed. And so that's an ongoing process, though. For me,
you're preaching to the choir here, as someone who considers books my friends. And my instructors and my companions, and offer me a grammar for my faith. And it's really important. So I love that you bring this deep learning and wisdom to this very active pursuit
Hmm.
of helping form pastors further in their work. What drew you to United? You were doing really good work already. How did we capture you?
I was drawn to United because of what I see going on here, which is a group of engaged and committed scholars and students and leaders who are not simply trying to adapt to the world as it is, but who are seeking to critically engage the world in order to change it. And I don't think this is a small thing, especially in higher education, in theological education too, right? Because so much of what happens in institutions of higher education is we have these institutions trying to seek to simply adapt in order to survive. And I think that is not a great space for creativity and for the kind of engagement, at least that I want to be involved in. And so what I see at United is an institution that is open to the future, that is interested in transformative theological work. It's committed to listening, to experimentation, to co-collaborating with the community in ways that, from my perspective, are really unprecedented. And ultimately, I'm excited to be directing the center because I believe United is committed to a radical reimagining of theological education as a practice of freedom. In my few months here, I've found United to be a warm and supportive place to work. And I feel incredibly grateful to be working with you, Molly, and with others, and to be serving as the director of this new center.
We ask a lot of you when we put a big old grant in front of you and said, now figure out how to connect this and make it work. And the array of gifts that you bring and imagination to this project is just astonishing. And we are so grateful to have you here. It's going to launch, this actual center is going to launch as the fall begins. Tell us about the event.
Yes, so I'm really excited to share that we have a launch event, a celebration. It'll be a celebratory event that will take place on September 22nd. That's a Thursday evening at 6 o'clock. And that will be in person from 6 to 7. We're going to have appetizers and drinks. And I think we're going to have a jazz trio, so some music. And I think we're going to have some art. And then at 7 o'clock, we'll have a service. And in that service, I'll speak a bit about the center and especially the program. Our 16 students who will be in the program will all be in attendance. And so that'll be a chance for them to get to know each other, but also for the teachers to meet them. And then for all of you in the community who are supportive, who want to be a part of this, we want to invite you to attend. And the service will have reflections. We'll have reflections from each of our teaching fellows. They will share on a particular theme that's meaningful to them. I don't know if I mentioned that the mission of the center really is grounded in faith, hope, and love. And of course, those are Paul's. Well, they're not just ideas. Those are things to be lived, right? Faith, hope, and love are not just ideas. And so I'm asking them to reflect on how those motifs, how those themes are lived in our world, how they understand them to be lived in our world. So I'm really excited about the launch. Again, it's Thursday, September 22nd, 6 to 8:30 p.m. here on campus in the Case Building in St. Paul. And again, 6 to 7, we'll have appetizers and a time for mingling and getting to know each other. And then from 7 to 8:30, we will have a service. And you can attend, if you can't make it in person, for whatever reason, you can attend online. It will be hybrid. From 7 to 8:30, we'll have the service as a live broadcast.
Well, don't you love a program that starts with a party and ends with a party? I think I like that a lot. Ry, thanks so much for this conversation. We could have talked on and on about scholarship, about your dream for this and what our hope is for these who participate in the center. And of course, this is just the first of several years of of this work, and we will continue to refine it and assess it and find better ways to equip the working pastor, and grateful to be able to do that. So again, so happy to have you at United, and all of you who've joined us. You would find it an interesting conversation to drop by and meet Ry one of these days. Take good care.